He's reshaped Ethiopia and won a Nobel Peace Prize. Now, Abiy Ahmed is facing a leadership test as he starts an offensive against the Tigray region. So, just what are the causes of tension there? And is Ethiopia heading for civil war? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. Tigray's leaders have dominated Ethiopia's ruling coalition of ethnically based parties for decades. But after Abiy Ahmed became prime minister in 2018, they refused to join his single-party alliance. They've also resisted his sweeping reforms. And in September, they went ahead with local elections, defying Abiy's decision to suspend polls because of coronavirus. He now says his patience has run out with Tigray. He's ordered a military operation in the region after accusing the TPLF of attacking federal troops, an accusation denied by the groups. It's feared the feud could lead to the breakup of Ethiopia, and the UN is calling for de-escalation of tensions. Emily Sue reports.
It was business as usual in the Ethiopian capital, but many here are on alert as an armed conflict simmers in the north of the country.
We're not people who fight and kill each other. Therefore, I personally feel that the Tigray and federal governments should solve their differences through dialogue and negotiations and prioritize the interests of our nation.
Chaos creates a perfect opportunity for robbery. Our country needs peace. I'm now sick of this. We're in a very disgusting time. I'm telling you the truth.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed launched a military offensive in the northern Tigray region, accusing the opposition-led local government of attacking federal troops and looting their assets. The region's ruled by the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF.
Today, the apostate Ethiopian has stabbed Ethiopia. What makes this attack one of the most shocking attacks is that TPLF is viewing the Ethiopian National Defense Forces as a foreign army. I declare that we Ethiopians will do all we can to shame and destroy this force.
Abiy declared a 6-month state of emergency in Tigray and shut down electricity, phone and internet services there. In a statement aired on Tigray TV, a regional government spokesman accuses the Nobel Prize-winning prime minister of cowing the people of Tigray into submission by force. Tensions between the two sides escalated in September when Tigray went ahead with regional elections despite a ban from the federal government. Abiy postponed the polls citing the coronavirus pandemic, but the TPLF says he delayed them to stay in power. The TPLF dominated Ethiopian politics for more than 3 decades and says Abiy squeezed him out of the federal government when he came to power in 2018. Analysts warn the conflict in Tigray could turn into a civil war.
This could also lead to the destabilization and the fracturing of Ethiopia's military, because Tigrayan officers, particularly based in Tigray, thought that they may not be loyal to the federal government in terms of its efforts to remove the TPLF leadership. So this could lead to a broader crisis throughout Ethiopia, and it could also spread to the Horn of Africa region.
The UN has called on both sides to de-escalate tensions and find a peaceful solution to the dispute. The Secretary General underlined the importance of stability for Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa, a region with a long history of border conflicts and political unrest. Emily Sue, Al Jazeera.
All right, let's bring in our guests from London. Awol Allo, a senior lecturer at Keele University and a Horn of Africa analyst. From Addis Ababa is Zadig Abraha, the Ethiopian minister in charge of democratization. And also from London is Martin Plaut, a senior research fellow at the Institute of Commonwealth Studies. Thank you all for joining us. Zadig, let me start with you today. Prime Minister Abiy said that the federal military operations in the north have, quote, clear, limited and achievable objectives. Where do things stand there now, and what are those objectives?
The objectives are loud and clear. As you may be aware of, our Northern Command base has been raided by the TPLF junta. Our artillery has been looted and our soldiers are surrounded, which is a clear break with the rule of law, with the law of the land. So we are there to make sure that the rule of law is upheld, and the law of the land, which is the constitution, is respected. So the measure is and then our second objective is to make sure that our citizens living there are living there freely without the interference of the TPLF military junta. So this is the objective, and as the Prime Minister has clearly stipulated, our military operation over there is meant to achieve these two major objectives.
Awol, just how close is Ethiopia to civil war right now?
I think Ethiopia is in a state of civil war already. What we have is an armed confrontation between the federal government forces and forces that are loyal to the regional government that controls a large swaths of territory, a regional government that has sufficient resources and administers the country. So this is a civil war. But just to address the point that he was making earlier, that the government was forced into this confrontation, I mean, to be quite honest, we know that the writings are already on the wall that war is coming in terms of the political confrontation between the two forces. And the war in Tigray now is basically an extension of the war that the Abiy government has been prosecuting in places like Oromia. The only reason why we are here talking about armed confrontation is because TPLF, which runs the Tigray region, has an army. It controls its own region. It has resources that allows it to defend itself. But the evidence very clearly shows that there has already been provocative military deployment on the border. So if TPLF, as the Ethiopian government claiming now, tried to loot, for example, the resources of the Northern Command, it's probably because it saw that war is coming and that war is imminent, because there has been threats of use of force against them.
Martin, so what are the reasons for the conflict and why has it escalated so much? Was the tipping point for all this the holding of the election?
I think that was the immediate cause. In a sense, you can't hold an election in an area where the part of a country where the federal government says you can't hold that election, that it's illegitimate, and if you go ahead with it, it's a direct challenge to the state. But perhaps even more directly, when the federal government attempted to send a military commander to the north to take control of the army, the Tigrayans basically told him to go home, that he wasn't going to be allowed. But if you go a little bit further back than that, you see really the disintegration of the system of government that was brought about in 1991 when the Tigrayans took control of the central government. And they brought about a system of ethnic federalism, which basically left them controlling through a series of proxies all the various regions and the peoples of Ethiopia. And that gradually fell away until you get the election of Prime Minister Abiy. And once that happened, it opened a Pandora's box and all sorts of ethnic tensions exploded.
Zadig, I know you were eager to jump in and respond to some of what Awol had said. Please go ahead.
The way Awol characterized the ongoing operation in Tigray is very wrong. If one is to call what's happening a civil war in the strictest sense of the term carries the weight of a war between people, like among people, which is not the case here. This is a conflict between federal government that is trying to uphold rule of law in Tigray and a rogue military junta that is trying to keep the good people of Tigray away from the rest of the country by way of massacre, looting banks, and so on. So this is not anywhere closer to civil war. And this is not an extension of what is happening in Oromia or somewhere else. You know, we are trying to make Ethiopia a democratic success against all odds. As a reform has brought about a number of challenges. And as a country that has been out there looking for a possible democratic government, we know what this brings about. So what's happening in Oromia or in the south, this is a normal challenge. And the way we are responding to the challenge is, we believe, the right way to do. Like, there is no this kind of attack against our military bases in Oromia or in the south. So this is not close. This is not an extension of what's happening in Oromia or in the south, and this is not also in any way a civil war. This is simply the people of Tigray are against this, against the move by the TPLF. Wherever our army makes its way in Dansha or in some other part of the region, now the people are coming out in mass and welcoming our army. It shows that the people of Tigray are not behind this behind the attack on our northern command base.
It would be interesting. It's really interesting to hear Zadig, as minister responsible for democratization, saying what he was just said. The prime minister dissolved the former governing EPRDF party and created a new party that does not reflect existing fault lines in the country, that does not reflect existing social cleavages or the kind of predominant modes of organizing and mobilization that exists in the country. He changed the party in a very rushed way in December of last year. By May, he realized that there is no way that that party could win anything resembling a competitive election. So the prime minister used the public health emergency in relation to COVID to postpone the election. Now, after essentially eliminating every kind of powerful or formidable political adversary within Oromia, which is the most significant region, after eliminating, jailing everybody, the prime minister is saying, now we can go for election, even though the initial justification, which is COVID, has not been dealt with. The numbers are going up, more people are dying. So you can see that the difference between these two forces is ultimately political. It is ideological. It's ideological in the sense that we have a prime minister that is determined to impose his own vision of the future on the Ethiopian people. He wants to make the Ethiopian state great again, an idea which is opposed by a significant majority in that country. And you have, on the other hand, people who are opposed to that vision. Now, in terms of TPLF, I have to say that the TPLF, who is the architect of the current political settlement, mismanaged that project. They dishonored that project. Zadig was a member of that party. He has been an ideologue for that party for a long period of time. He knows that situation. The question is not so much that TPLF is here some kind of saint, but the war itself is very much a reflection of the ideological difference between the two actors, and it should not have morphed into an armed confrontation of this sort. And the reasons that the government is giving is really not the real reason behind the war.
Martin, I want to take a step back here for a moment, because the Tigray, Zadig, I'm sorry, I will get back to you as soon as I've asked Martin another question, then I'll give you a chance to respond. I know you wanted to respond to Martin and also to some of what Awol is saying. Let me just ask Martin this question first. Martin, I want to take a step back, as I was saying. You know, the Tigrayans have held a great deal of power since 1991. Since Prime Minister Abiy has come to power, has he sidelined the TPLF or the Tigrayans, or has he just attempted to redistribute power among Ethiopia's various ethnic groups?
No, I mean, he has definitely sidelined the Tigrayans, and they feel that, I mean, very much so. But, I mean, you know, there was a very good point made by one of my colleagues, and he said that the government's argument that this is a just war comes down to a very specific claim, that ethnic conflict and political violence since April 2018 has occurred because the TPLF, the Tigrayans, have planned and executed it. To win this argument, concrete evidence will have to be made public. And that is really at the heart of what they're having to show. If they believe, if the Prime Minister Abiy believes that there is direct evidence that the Tigrayans have been behind every single one of the problems that there have been across the country, let him show it. One more challenge, let the Ethiopians and the Tigrayans allow reporters, independent reporters, both from Ethiopia and from the international community, to go up to the front lines and witness what's going on for themselves and end the cutting off of telecommunications with Tigray. Let information flow. then we'll begin to know what's really going on.
All right, Zadig, please go ahead. I know you wanted to jump in before. Here's your chance to respond.
Okay, I want to first tackle what Awol has said. You know, EPRDF, Awol is saying that the Prosperity Party, the newly established party, which is a continuation of PRDF in some sense, is established by the Prime Minister. This is very wrong. The Prime Minister is part and parcel of the effort to change EPRDF into Prosperity Party. So it is not only the Prime Minister's vision, it is a shared vision among the rank and file of the Prosperity Party. And Awol said the difference between TPLF and Prosperity Party is ideological difference. That is very wrong. He's attacking our Northern Command. He's attacking our soldiers. An ideological difference. It can never be the case. It is simply an attempt by the terrorist group to impose its will on our military base, which rejected its call, a time and again call to join its resistance. And Prosperity Party is established in a way that aggregates the problems here, the problems in the country. It's aware of the fault lines, and the way our program is designed is in a way that solves our long-standing problems. If PRDF's program was meant to solve our long-standing problems, it would have solved it. What we are seeing is because the PRDF didn't solve our problems, it simply worsened or postponed it to some other time. And Awol also said that the election was postponed for wrong reasons. That's very wrong. You know, 50 plus countries have postponed the election due to COVID-19. And it was not our will. We wanted to go out for the election and compete openly, but it is up to the National Electoral Board to do so. The National Electoral Board felt due to COVID, Ethiopia is not ready for election. So we were forced. We were members of these parties who said, who opposed the decision of the National Electoral Board. You know, National Electoral Board is chaired by Bertura Mdeksa, a non-opposition figure, and nobody can question her credibility. And she's more credible than any of us. So this is not our will. This is the will of the National Electoral Board, and we were meant to accept it. And now, you know, COVID has become a way of life. You don't have a proof that it will go away someday. Nobody has a proof that we'll be able to get the vaccine anytime soon. So we cannot postpone. But even if Ethiopia's people right to vote for unlimited number of time, like for undetermined number of time. And it's even now, it is not up to us. The National Electoral Board came up with the solution that since we have learned a lot, since we have come to know how to live with COVID, then we can go ahead with the election and make it happen in 9 months' time. So, and we are subserving ourselves to the decision of the National Electoral Board together with the Parliament.
Zadig,
so I don't think what the idea is ill-founded, and it's not the truth. It is against the truth of the ground.
All right, Zadig, I can see
and
now that
I want to tackle what Martin said.
Zadig, I'm sorry, but we're starting to run out of time. Yes. Let me get back to you with another question in a few minutes. You can respond to what Martin said, but I want to go to Awol now because he wanted to jump in and respond to some of what you were saying just now. Go ahead, Awol.
It's astonishing that people like Zadig or the Prime Minister would tell us what is so wrong with the TPLF regime or with the EPRDF regime. These people were an integral part of the EPRDF regime. Zadig was one of the ideologues. The Prime Minister, he was one of the people, he was a minister, he was responsible for one of the security agencies in that country. Now, it is easy, having served in that regime, now to say that that regime has dishonored the constitution, was not committed to democratization. But what reason do we have to believe that the people who are now running the country are actually committed to democratization when we see on the ground practices that are completely the opposite of what they say? Zadig said the electoral board is independent. There is no evidence to show that the electoral board is actually independent. The Prime Minister is in control of the government, and most of the things that are happening in the country are happening precisely because he mismanaged the transitional process. He mismanaged the transitional process in the sense that while he was given a very specific mandate when he came to power, I think it's important to understand that this Prime Minister was not elected, that he was selected by the party after a popular protest by the Oromo youth forced the then Prime Minister to resign. When he was selected by his party, he was given a very specific, very limited mandate, which is to lead the country through transition to democracy while building political consensus and promoting national reconciliation. That was the mandate that he was given. And instead of doing that, the prime minister basically presented himself as somebody who got a fresh mandate from the electorate, and he started making interventions that have a constitutional implication. He wanted to recreate the Ethiopian state. He wanted to push the political settlement in a different direction. That is what is at the core of the problem that we see now. But in terms of this violence that is being blamed against the TPLF and other forces, I think it's important to highlight that while one cannot rule out that TPLF might have an interest in instigating violence, at the same time, there are reasons to believe that the government might be behind some of the violence that we see. When in Shashamane, for example, a significant number of people were killed, security forces were simply standing there and watching. They said, we have not been instructed to intervene. Now, as somebody who grew up in Ethiopia, I know that it is a country where kind of law and order culture runs deep. Security forces would actually want to enforce law and order even when they are not on duty. So when you look at events such as that, when you look at, for example, the way in which the recent violence in the Wolaga region has been spinned by the government, there are reasons to suspect that the government may be behind some of this violence. I'm not saying that there is a clear evidence, but when they accuse TPLF and other forces, they are expected to come forward with evidence so that people would be able to judge. But there are also reasons to suspect that the government may be behind some of this.
Well, let me just, sorry to interrupt you, but I know Zadig's been trying to get in a point. He wanted to respond to something Martin said. Zadig, please go ahead, but please be mindful, we don't have much time left, and I'd like to try to get Martin's thoughts on what you have to say about his response earlier as well. Go ahead.
Okay. One thing I want to get straight corrected is we are not the ones that interrupted the telecommunication connectivity in Tigray. It is a TPLF regime through its apparatus that interrupted the telecommunication connectivity. And the government has no problem subscribing itself to an independent review, and we have been availing it for that. But I also want to respond to what Awol has been saying. You know, yes, we are part of the regime, but the Prime Minister and other people, other officials, including myself, asked our people for an apology, and we are given the chance to get our record straight. And the difference between us and the TPLF is here. TPLF chose not to be part of a new political settlement, not to subscribe itself for a call to a fair share of power.
Zadig,
rather, the TPLF is so used to privilege that.
Zadig, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just that we're really almost out of time, and I want to ask Martin here as well a last question. I want to know from your perspective, Martin, how likely is it that Eritrea's military gets pulled into this now?
I think that is a real danger. We have seen some reports that people with Eritreans have been found on the battlefield in uniform. That cannot be corroborated yet. And there are also some suggestions of mobilization inside Eritrea. As I say, this cannot be corroborated. But let me just put one point to you, which is that there's been a warning from the United States Institute of Peace, which includes people like Chet Crocker and Johnny Carstens, the former Assistant Secretary of State for Africa. Both of them warn of the danger of a collapse of the Ethiopian state, the largest state collapse in modern history. That's what they're saying is possible. This is a really, really dangerous position. And, you know, the idea that it could reach across the region makes it even more serious. I think people have to be very, very concerned about what's going on.
All right, we've run out of time, so we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much to all our guests, Awol Allo, Zadig Abraha, and Martin Plaut. And thank you, too, for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Mohammed Jamjoom, and the whole team here, bye for now.